Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at my newest custom, which is a Mr. Freeze, Dr. Victor Freeze. And my customer sent me an image, a concept image of an unused concept art. Gosh, I cannot talk today, which is bad for this video since it's mostly talking. He sent me some concept art that was never used for the Arkham games and said he wanted me to make a figure of that concept art. He wanted it in DC Direct scale roughly. He wanted it to be a pretty good size figure. So he decided he wanted to do it on a Marvel Select Colossus base, which I thought was a pretty good idea. We had to use some liberty in the design, but it still turned out to look pretty good, I think. And I do like our choices that we made compared to the concept art. So I'm happy with it. I think this was a great base to use, and so I'm really happy that he came up with that idea. So let's take a look at the figure. He stands about 8 3/4 inches tall to the top of his dome, to the top of his head about 8 1/2. And so what you can see is that any parts that have these kind of like striations or the little groove marks on them, those are Marvel Select Colossus. The hands are Colossus. And the boots, aside from those straps that I added and the tips at the end, are Colossus. Everything else I made. The entire torso has been resculpted. Everything from this line up, that is the upper Colossus, completely new. I had took all of the Colossus off, I sanded it down, cut off most of his neck, cut off his head, and sculpted this all from scratch. I did use a couple tricks, so to speak, so I didn't have to sculpt all of these little rivets by hand. That would have been a pain in the butt, but I made them and then I put them on. And then this, I sculpted this, and then I used hose, obviously, that I didn't actually sculpt because sculpting a tube would just be insanely difficult. So that's what I did for that. That's actually the Marvel Select Colossus head that I completely resculpted, aside from the nose and aside from the ears. Everything else, I also left those little jaw lines in there under the cheekbones. Everything else is resculpted. The mouth is resculpted, the goggles are sculpted, the whole head is sculpted, the brow is sculpted. So all that good stuff is all me. I couldn't be happier with how the goggles turned out. I was a little worried about making those and having them look right, but I think they turned out pretty good. You guys can let me know what you think about that. I also made the dome removable so that he can be posed. Obviously, if you can't pose him, what's the fun in that? So the dome comes off, it kind of snaps in place, and then you can pose the head on there. So that has the double ball peg that Colossus originally had, so it's got tons of articulation. The dome itself is made out of, and this was probably the hardest part of the whole custom. I wasn't sure what I was going to do for the dome, just because obviously I can't make clear plastic things, and I can't just go buy a dome for a Mr. Freeze figure. So what I had to do was do some searching. I looked for cigar tubes, I looked for beakers, anything I could think of that might work, and I pretty much found nothing. And then luckily on eBay I found some Disney figures, some little tiny 2-inch little statue type things that came in these clear plastic domes. So it turned out to be the perfect size for what I needed, and I couldn't have been any luckier or happier with how that worked out. Completely random, completely lucky, but it really made the whole figure possible. So like I said, that was pure luck. As far as how I made this whole thing, I sculpted the entire main body piece, this piece here, sculpted that from beginning to end, and then I did all the extra stuff like the shoulder pads. That's all sculpted, the collar and this part, and then I sat the dome in there and sculpted around it and all that kind of thing. The very last part I did was add the head and sculpt the neck part. The tank back here, which is his freezing liquid stuff that he shoots out of his gun, that was made actually out of an insulin vial, so it's all glass. And then the tube that's in there is stainless steel, and the liquid is dyed hand sanitizer. None of those things should ever break down, and that's why I chose to use those, and plus I needed a clear tube. But clear plastic tends to discolor and could react with the food coloring or the hand sanitizer or just sunlight, so that was something I didn't want to do. So using glass was the way to go. And then the metal tube in there should be no problem also. And then I sculpted the bottom, this ring around here, and the top obviously. I added a little gauge thing at the very top and the tube that goes down to his gun. The gun was made out of a Despero gun. This main part here is Despero, DC Universe Classics Build-A-Figure Despero. I added the part up in the front, I added this part down here, and I added the handle to make it look like a Mr. Freeze gun. And I think that turned out pretty good. We didn't need any specific design. He said as long as it looked like it belonged to Mr. Freeze and fit the character, he was okay with it, so that's what I did. I think it looks okay. All of the arm stuff was sculpted. The forearm was made to match the shoulders, obviously. Then there's like a strap on there, and then the main part. So that was all sculpted. The belt buckle was sculpted to match the rest, obviously. He's got some freeze grenades on there, which I sculpted the little bracket part that holds them in place. And the grenades themselves are, what was that? It was some fodder pieces I had that I modified. I think they were flashlights, actually. But they don't look like flashlights anymore. They look like World War II style grenades. World War I. No, I don't remember. Either way, the kind of grenades that have the stick on the end and then the ball on the other end. Whatever. So I added the straps then to the legs, added the little buckles on there throughout the boots and the thighs, sculpted the toe cuffs, and that's about it. The hosing was all put on separate. This is actually flexible, even though it's probably not a good idea to pull on that because it was glued on and sculpted on. It's sculpted into that, so that'll make it a little sturdier, and this piece is the same. And this is all matching. So I think that's pretty much it. A lot of sculpting going on. I added the little buckles in there for the chest piece. That was just fodder. I also do have, where'd it go? A blast effect, a freeze effect for his gun. That just kind of snaps on there. And I know what you're thinking. Mr. Freeze's gun doesn't shoot a ray like that. It shoots more like a standard type of beam. Well, posing this figure and setting on a shelf with a big blue beam hanging off the end just wouldn't have looked good. It would have looked weird and it would have been saggy. So I thought something that was more along the lines of a little blast effect would have been a little better if I can put it on. And that just snaps on the end of the gun. I can't really snap it on with one hand like this. There we go. So I think that works pretty well. A little blast effect for his gun. And this is, of course, flexible. So he maintains all of his original articulation. I did not get rid of anything except for the swivel in the legs because that wasn't necessary, and Colossus doesn't have the strongest legs in the first place. So that was okay. And then for the head, if you guys watched the Watch Me Paint videos, you probably saw me paint a flat base coat, and then I dry brushed the light blue on top of that, and then I went back in later with a brush, and it looked like I was painting kind of like the same color, but I just did some slightly, just very slightly lighter highlights on his face, on the front of his face and ears, to help the face stand out a little bit. And you can't quite tell unless you know, or unless I'm telling you, but that's a little trick you can use, kind of like the way girls put on makeup to shape their face and make their face look a different shape. That's kind of what I did with the coloring on his face. For the goggle lenses, I painted those like a glossy red. Same thing for these pieces here. And then I actually painted in the glare or reflection that they would have with some white paint, and that's a little trick you can do also. So I think that's effective. Just use a little bit of gloss and then you can actually paint in your own glare, and it gives them a little extra depth even on top of that. So I guess I could tell you about the painting. So the light blue, if you guys didn't see the video, the light blue is dry brushed on top of black. The purple is dry brushed on top of a really dark blue. Then all of the gunmetal is just painted normally, and then the black is painted normally as well. I think that pretty much covers it. I talked about the tank, I talked about sculpting everything, and that is about it. So there it is, guys. Thanks for watching. If you haven't and you're interested in seeing me paint this figure, watch how I put it all together, you can go back and watch the Watch Me Paint series for this guy. I think it's pretty interesting anyway. It's interesting for me, and a lot of people asked for it. So if you like that sort of thing, check it out. If you don't, then you'll be bored to death, so don't. Check it out if you're not interested in that sort of thing, some time-lapse painting. Alright guys, there it is. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.